So, I want to start this episode with a shout out and celebration of bravery from someone in our Business Bravery community. This week, I am featuring Grace Pimentel, and I hope I'm saying her surname correctly. I have known Grace for quite some time. We connected over in the CEO crowd, and we've had a number of conversations. Grace is an artist and she teaches people to do junk journals. So a junk journal is it's kind of like scrapbooking, but messy and fun. So you use all types of different mediums and you can use it to express various things, and it can be a great tool for mental health stuff if you're that way inclined, or just a great way to express yourself through like just multiple different mediums and things. Grace has done an ebook in the past, but her brave thing that she's doing at the moment is she is about to run her first ever workshop to teach people the junk journaling process. And that workshop will be coming up on May 22nd. And when I give you her details, you can go find her to get more details so you can join if that is something you want to check out. I really wanted to feature Grace just because she's someone who said to me, like, she said, Tiff, ever since I met you, the idea of being brave, it's just been in my mind. It's like, oh, I'm doing brave things and I can do this. And so I just really wanted to feature her and just, celebrate the bravery of doing your first workshop, doing it online and everything too. So you can find Grace over on Instagram at the Serendipitous Crafter. Uh, so Therendipitous Crafter, Crafter, all together, no spaces or anything like that. And yeah, definitely check her out. She has these amazing reels where she shares uh, what she does in terms of creating these junk journals, and they're just amazing to watch and so inspiring. So, if you would like to be featured on one of these shout outs, come and join us in the Business Bravery with Tiff Facebook group. And that is a really great place to be featured. Or check out online on the Instagram stories for all of the goodness there. And I sometimes share when I'm doing these. There's going to be a whole new like form process and all that good stuff. So yeah, go and check out Grace. She is amazing. And yeah, keep doing brave things, guys. I'm your host, Tiffany Gilliland, an Australian business and mindset coach with 10 years' experience in online marketing and the creator of the Business Bravery Framework. I help coaches like you to be brave so you can stop dreaming and start doing that next big brave step and finally make more impact and get more clients. From speaking on camera to selling to launching, my approach to bravery helps you take bigger leaps without the mindset spirals. It's the secret ingredient to bigger results. In today's episode, I want to share my lessons learned from quarter 1. So that's January, February, March of 2024, depending on when you're listening to this episode. So back in episode 40, a few episodes back, I talked about blocks I had during quarter 1 and working through them. Basically, in the middle of March, I kind of had March was Bravery Month, and it worked really well for the first couple of weeks. And then I kind of lost momentum in the middle of that whole Bravery Month, partly due to mindset, but also due to health issues. Like I was really showing up and just putting myself out there, and it was just a little bit too much for my nervous system. And with my chronic health conditions, that all came in, which really slowed me down. So there was partly that, but also partly mindset stuff. So this is my process for kind of uncovering lessons learned without beating myself up too much. So I just want to sort of talk about this as part of the Business Bravery Framework, namely that check-in process that we do as part of the whole planning system that I teach, and the check-in process, which kind of can happen weekly, monthly, quarterly. So I'll sort of be talking about how that works as part of my story today, but also in regards to what I was actually going through. as like a solid concrete example. I'm really excited to share this story and all of this stuff today. And although also I'm feeling a little bit nervous just because like it's never fun to kind of be open and vulnerable and sort of say, hey guys, I help you guys with this, but I also go through it too in my own ways. And this is what makes me a better coach because like I've gone through it, I go through it. And so, yeah, it's just, even though some of these things, like I've been working on for years, and it's like what I find fascinating is like I have covered and worked through these things when it comes to creating content or just even getting on a video and things like that. And yet, some of these things were sneaking up on me a little bit, and just in terms of me doing being a guest on other people's podcasts and some of that stuff, and it's nothing that I haven't done before, but I definitely organized a lot of it in a short amount of time. And yes, anyway, so lessons learned. Today's episode will be useful for those of you who are just struggling with consistency in any area of your business, or if you're struggling with having the plan and doing the things you say you're going to do. Okay. So if you're holding back on taking the big, bold actions that will move you forward. So some examples of that can be, committing to a niche or just having conversations. It can be creating content, doing videos, running the masterclass, if that's your thing, launching the new coaching program, whatever that might be. And, like for me, some of this stuff was coming up around being a guest on other people's podcasts and that kind of thing. But all of this is relatable because I'm talking about the thoughts and the feelings which so many of us will go through, and then the process of like reframing that whole that stuff in our brain so that we can take action and keep moving forward. So this episode will also be useful if you're having any issues just sort of focusing on like any and all tasks that would likely get you the business that you want, like the main tasks that will get you that dream business. And if you have ever experienced sort of thoughts or feelings of maybe not being enough or not doing enough, not being worthy of success, or even a fear of failure, right? And like I said before, that dreaming big, but getting stuck when it comes to the doing phase and things like that can be around procrastination, overwhelm, and uncertainty, this episode is 100% for you. Okay, so the key takeaways for today. So this is about being kind to yourself when things don't go according to plan. Just realized I hadn't turned my timer on. Okay, so being kind to yourself when things don't go according to plan, when thoughts and your health derails your momentum in business. And it doesn't have to be health things. Sometimes it can simply be thoughts around, I'm not doing enough, it's not enough, nobody cares. Some of those things can just derail us. It doesn't even have to be the health side of things that can come into play either. But this is about sort of how to recover without being mean to yourself, without beating yourself up, without saying things like, oh, I'm just being slack at the moment, I'm not doing enough, I just have to do more. And it's also about sort of spotting negative thinking and the repeating patterns and how to work through it. And as I kind of said at the beginning of this episode, this stuff that is coming up, I have worked through at other points in my business, and yet it is coming back around. And so, like, I'm actually some things that I'm not talking to you about that are part of this process is like I'm working through stuff that was caused in childhood and earlier on in other relationships and things like that. So I'm working through some of that. That's not what I'm sharing today. But once I'm through that process, then I will share about it. Once I'm through that process and I know what worked and what didn't work and all of that sort of stuff, then I'll definitely be sharing that process. However, this is just how I keep myself on track in my business and that kind of thing. But it is just letting you know that like while these are repeating patterns, it is a case of like it gets easier to move through and spot and notice and things like that. And so that's part of why I love this business bravery framework that I've created, because it really just does help to sort of notice these patterns, but also just be kind to yourself while you're moving through it. Because the hardest part, and like this is what I used to do before before I learnt more from coaches and being in various courses and programs and things like that, all of the stuff that I've invested a lot of money in to get to this point where I feel like I can turn around and help other people with this is, excuse me. Oh, sorry, my voice will warm up and it will get a bit better. Sorry about that. So the, what was I saying? That's right. The being kind to yourself is essential, because my approach used to be, it was like, it either used to be like these things, these thoughts and things would derail my launches and things like that. Or, just anytime I was trying to do something outside of my comfort zone, and I might agree with the thoughts and go, yeah, this is too hard. Oh, I can't do this. I'm too tired. I'm too sick. And just go, okay, oh, this type of business isn't possible. It's time to change my niche. It's time to change my business plan or my business model. And by that, I just mean, like how many clients do I need at what price, and how often do I work with people and what days for this and that. And so, yet a lot of the times, as I've been learning, it can be just looking at the thoughts and reframing them just has so much power in getting me back on track and that kind of stuff. So the the being mean to yourself through that process makes it harder to get back on the horse. My gosh, that is an absolute cliche. Sorry about that. It's a cliche. I'm trying to do less ums, ahs, and so's. So there might be just blank spots where I don't say things. That's me. So, yes, those are the key takeaways today is just being like, and I will talk about this more throughout the episode and give you more evidence for it, but just being kind to myself has just made it easier for me to move forward and take action when I inevitably stumble. Okay. And I know inevitably stumble is not something that I expect going into things, but if and when it does happen, then it's just so much easier to be kind to yourself than just to be like, oh, come on, you're better than this, and just all of that stuff that, depending on the way, like the lessons you learn through childhood or whatever, just yeah. Um, you could have picked up some of these negative reinforcement techniques. It can be the way the brain gets us to feel motivated. Like I think there's a part of the brain that sort of feels like that whole negative reinforcement can get us to take action, especially when it's worried about surviving. And that's something that we take into these situations, because when we're working outside of our comfort zones, our like our fight, flight, freeze response, fawn response, all of that can be triggered when we're working outside of our comfort zone, right? And the body just doesn't know the difference between what's going on in our much more safe world, I guess, versus, a tiger coming to eat us. So it's processing things like potential rejection or negative comments or people saying no, the same as if it's like a tiger coming to eat us. And so then when you've got the brain doing that, so it's trying to keep us surviving and not getting the negative comment, which it thinks is the same as like a tiger coming to eat us. And then it's working on all these things to help keep us safe, to help keep us in the cave and not taking actions and not moving forward. So a lot of that can be around this negative reinforcement, because that can get us to take action and has done in the past, right? So just depending on who you are, how you've I don't want to say how you've been raised, but who you are, the experiences you had in childhood, the way you process those experiences, all of that can be a part of where we get to now, where we can find ourselves stuck in procrastination, overwhelm, uncertainty. And then this is where we come in. So if I'm going to talk to you more about the bravery board, the planning as part of the business bravery framework. And I just want you to know that I'm going to be teaching the classes to teach all of that in June. The next round's happening in June. I'm very excited, and some of the lessons learned from quarter 1 are going to change how that works in June in the end of quarter 2. So yeah, I'll be talking to you more about that. If in the meantime you want support with this while you're listening, there's ways to get in touch and ways to work with me. And there is, of course, the Business Bravery Facebook group, which you can join for extra support. And I'm doing extra stuff in that group. So extra training, tips, support, all of the good stuff. So now let's go into what happened in June and the lessons learned. So just I feel like I already kind of explained, but just to sort of bring us back to the situation in March, which is the situation, which is sorry, just taking a pause because my brain is trying to tell me that this is a horribly like created episode and I'm breathing through it. I didn't do a meditation before I hit record, and I just think that that might have helped, but I was running late and I just wanted to get the episode out. And now my brain is just telling me just how terrible this episode is. So anyway, thanks, brain. I am going to take that on board, but I think I'm going to trust myself that this, I mean, I do have this set of notes that I'm working from, so we're going to go with it and see where we end up. And if I was brave enough to put this out, please get in touch and tell me that you got this from the episode. and and that it was worth me moving forward. So the situation, March was bravery month, as I said. I got blocked halfway through. Here's the details of the situation. Like the first 2 weeks of bravery month were awesome, as well as probably like the week leading into bravery month where I was, oh, bravery month is coming and all that stuff. So the first week, oh no, the week before bravery month even started, I had organized to run a masterclass in the CEO crowd membership, right? So somebody else's membership. It's an awesome membership. Go check it out. It's amazing. Tell them I sent you. But I was doing a version of the masterclass in there. And then the very next day, I had a podcast where I was a guest on somebody else's podcast. And this is the first one, I think. This is the first one that I had done since I created the whole bravery board framework and everything, as opposed to before when I was just getting on and talking about bravery and business and everything like that, as opposed to me having this framework. And I have kind of more stories and more talking points and things like that now, as for me being a guest on somebody else's podcast. So, and I had those two, one, and then the next day that podcast. And I think I had another guest podcast in that same week. I had these three things all at once this one week. And I even posted about it in stories. I was really showing up and going, here's what I'm doing and all of that. And my whole body was freaking out. Like it just was completely in fight or flight response. Now, this is not something that is unusual for me. I have a big background with anxiety and that kind of stuff. So it wasn't the worst thing in the world. However, I did sort of up the ante and make things a little bit harder for myself by not getting like full night's sleep each night. And it wasn't my fault. I tried. My brain was just awake. It wouldn't let me get to sleep. I wasn't getting all of the I just yes. I some things that I now know that so and I'm skipping into the lessons learned already, but just yes, learned the hard way that that was just a bit too much. But when I booked them in months beforehand, and I was like, yeah, I'll get through it. It'll be all right. Just have Planner me is so ambitious. She has so much faith in me. And yet doing me just sometimes freaks out. So yes, I definitely pushed my nervous system a bit too far. I also wasn't really exercising enough through that week. And if you go back and listen to episode 40, you'll hear about when I'm getting blocked and having blocks in my mindset. I kind of do like a what I call sort of like a pre-flight checklist type deal. So before even getting into any mindset stuff, it's like, okay, how's my sleep? How's my food? How is my exercise? My food's pretty locked in, but exercise and sleep can be some variables. How much water have I had can also be other variables. And just how much rest am I getting and things like that. That has a big impact on me. My body is very sensitive to stress. And then when it gets stressed like that, what happens is so because some things that I've had to learn the hard way has been things like, okay, I'll have a really great day where I'm doing all of the things and like planative, the ambitious side of me is so excited because I'm doing all the things and getting everything done. Because, when you look at your calendar and you've got all of these blocks and everything, and it just like it all looks doable. And yet then I would have the very following day where I just couldn't really get out of my own way to get anything done. And it took me a long time to actually correlate these two. As I'm telling you, it sounds absolutely obvious. But yeah, I just thought that on that day, the second day, after I'd had a really good day like that, where I'd got everything done, I just thought, my brain was working against me. I wasn't disciplined enough. It was rebelling, and I just had to get it back into mode so it could just work, work, work. However, what I have learned since then is that with all of that extra, probably the extra stress uh, hormones and things that we're probably going through, like my body creates cortisol nearly naturally, it seems. Um, I have some health stuff and hormonal stuff that makes that a situation. And so, yeah, what I didn't realize was then that next day, it's like my body's trying to recover. And I think while so far as I know, I don't have ADHD or anything like that, the videos I've seen for people who are in like sometimes have that dopamine crash and they kind of can't get themselves to do anything. That's sort of what it felt like. And it's sort of like brain fog. And when you're trying to make decisions, the brain can't think and things like that. So, yeah, it just took me a while to work out like the way I need to work. And that's like how much rest I need to put in because, like, my brain always wants to tell me you're not earning enough yet. You can't rest until you're earning enough. However, when I don't get enough rest, I have too much stress. I can't make decisions. I get stuck in procrastination and overwhelm, and then I will never create the income that I want. So it becomes this, uh, you know, I don't even want to say self-fulfilling prophecy, but it's just this like circular momentum. So that's what was happening for me in March. And then I did inevitably have like a whole hormonal shift and I hit brain fog in the last 2 weeks of March. And I had to do I had to do like what I normally do in those situations, which is like do bare minimum weeks. And that's just not what you can do when you're supposed to be launching and showing up and all of that stuff. So yeah, I pulled back. I also felt a little bit bad about it. However, I can sort of see it now that we're a couple of weeks away from that now as I'm recording. So yeah, it's just I know you're not going to hear this until May, but I'm recording this on the 8th of April. So I took those 2 weeks and then I already had the first week of April organized as a week off. I'm putting these like, because I'm doing my whole business on these like monthly planning situations and planning further ahead and things like that. And I have the the way I work with clients now is that I work with people, we do 2 sessions a month rather than weekly calls. So that means that I can move things around and organize not to have calls on certain weeks. And then I can also organize content creation and everything around, like some months have a fifth week in the month, which means I don't have to even create content on that week. So it's like, okay, you know what? We're going to take the week off. And that had been planned for me to recover from the whole bravery month. So that that was sort of what happened. And I'm mixing in the lessons learned while I tell you this, but so some context for me is like this can be a familiar pattern for me when I'm trying to go to the next level or trying to push things, trying to push into a new identity from kind of a more masculine and making it happen thing. Part of my kind of some old beliefs that I've had that I'm still working through is some old beliefs like, oh my gosh, if I just work harder, I can make it happen, because I'm a hard worker. I can make it happen if I work hard. I'm not afraid of hard work. I'm not afraid of hard work to make my dreams come true and things like that. However, with my natural sensitivity to stress and stress hormones, I actually have to work smarter. And so, yes, um, lessons learned. And you know what? Like, as I'm talking to you now, it's not even in my notes, but I am thinking about like the last time I did something like this, I did 30 days of lives. This was a number of years ago. And I remember at the end of that going, oh my gosh, I'm not going to do that again. And yeah, it's just sort of learning, understanding that my body just does not, yeah, that whole, like I haven't worked it out yet, how to be able to show up like that, plus all of the other things that I was doing. So the thing about like previously when I've done launches, you know, I might have had classes on different days or things like that, but it sort of really only ever went over a couple of weeks or something. Not counting that pre-launch phase, but just, yeah, I don't know. Sorry, I'm thinking it out as I'm talking to you guys. It's just, this also comes back to another repeating pattern of mine. And for those of you who know, in the Business Bravery Framework, we set goals, and when I set goals, the plan is when we're checking in, it's like, did we put in 80% of the effort to get to that goal? And the reason I have this in place is because I do have these perfectionistic, overworking tendencies. So for me, it's like if I've got a goal, my something in my brain, which I could tell you all of the background about how this probably came to be, and many of you listening might even recognize it in other people, but it likely comes from a not enoughness place. But it's this whole situation of, you know what? Sorry, I'm pausing because the neighbor's dog is going crazy and that's a slight distraction. Okay, but so my brain tends to just really think that if I have a goal and if I want the goal to happen, I need to put in all of this extra effort, right? So my perfectionistic tendencies and things like that. Sorry, this is like self-coaching while I talk this out. But yeah, so just yes, it's just interesting how for me, 100%, like doing anything 100% is like, especially a goal, it's like, okay, forget that family or other people exist, get 4 hours of sleep a night and do everything you absolutely can. That's how you can achieve a goal. And it's funny because I've been telling this while I've been teaching the masterclasses. I've done 2 rounds of these masterclasses now. So I've taught it a number of times. I've even shared it on some podcasts as a guest and things. And as I'm talking to you guys now, I seem to be in some sort of self-reflective mood. And yeah, I'm just realizing how crazy that is and how much that is coming from a place of not being enough. And for me, for like my perfectionistic tendencies, I had to I had to kind of, in order for me to take action, because like this is how my perfectionism used to display itself. And I don't talk a lot about perfectionism because I because when things are under control, I don't really feel like I'm a perfectionist. That sounds funny when things are under control. Uh, but also just because like I know what works for me as a perfectionist, and yet anytime I've come into other real hardcore perfectionists, I haven't been able to help them shift because a decision has to come from their side that they want to shift. And I don't want to attract people who are like, perfectionism is the only way. And because for some people, perfectionism works to a certain extent. For me, however, perfectionism, like if I couldn't make something perfect, I didn't want to start at all. And I would start it at the last minute and do a rush job so that then, like, and I'm talking assignments at school, at university. uh, sorry, at university, I'd have the date for the assignment, and for whatever reason, like my university was pretty good about giving extensions. You could get a 2-week extension without too much of an issue. And I always used to rely on that. So I used to nearly plan out, they'll be handing that in 2 weeks later. Great, no worries. Anyway, and even stuff for business and that kind of thing. So yes, because I couldn't, like, it was impossible for me to make things perfect. So then I wouldn't want to try. So it was like, it was better to not try at all than for it to not be perfect, and therefore to me to not be good enough. And, like likely not be loved and accepted and all of that sort of stuff. So, yes, we can see how this plays into my launches and has done a number of times. Because I think if you're sitting there thinking that it's like, if I'm showing up in a launch, like, and sometimes when when it means so much, when I'm so into the outcome, when it means so much, it's like all of a sudden I then show up. I feel like I've got to show up at like 1,000%. And if you're trying to show up at 1,000% effort every day for a month, God, it's no wonder that I fell in a heap in the middle of it. Pretty impressed that I got through because, like I said, I was sort of in that pre-launch phase the week before March started. So yeah, by the time I fell over, I'd had 3 weeks at working at 1,000% every day. And that 1,000% is like in fight or flight, hardcore, extra cortisol, right? Like I said, my body makes cortisol kind of just by waking up and breathing. And I think there is to that to some extent. I'm being tongue in cheek, trying to be humorous and that kind of thing. But yes, gosh, it's just because like this is why I've always struggled with like the hustle culture online, because my personality, like you don't have to tell me to work hard and to hustle. Like what I'm going through is learning how to slow down. And actually, Rebecca in the CEO crowd, she was talking about how when you're trying to do all the things, it's your ego is kind of involved in that situation. It's just really interesting how I can see those connections as I talk this out with you guys. So this is not how I had planned for this podcast to go. I've got my timer looking down and it's like, I've got 3 minutes until I hit the 30-minute mark. And then I'm trying to make these 30 to 40 minutes. So how can I get back on some kind of track? But yes, I think you can kind of see some of my lessons learned, right? Uh, hmm. So yes, definitely some work to do on the ego here. Also, like I've written things like, my subconscious was also a play, like it's trying to keep me safe. Because here's the other fun part, and another probably repeating process of mine. It's like if my body gets me to work at 1,000% in a launch, then I will wear myself out before the launch finishes. And then it won't be my fault. Like I sort of said, I don't know if I finished this, it might have been a half thought, but back in, say, university or at school, I would leave assignments and things to the last minute so that I could do um a half-assed attempt, and then like I would get a B or something like that on a report, and then I could go, oh well, that's because I left it to the last minute. That's really good considering I did it at the last minute, until I worked on that. And then in my master's, I was like I did a master's of media and communications, and yeah, I wasn't leaving things to the last minute. I was still doing my best effort and still only getting B's. It's like doesn't matter what I do, I just can't get A's except for things like anything to do with computers. I got A's for, and creative writing. So I guess it helps that I work in marketing and I started out in whatchamacallit, copywriting. That's where I started. Social media management, copywriting, creating content. So yeah, I guess we can see how those things work. So yes, but what I'm trying to say is by my subconscious getting me to work at 1,000% and really show up, it's and like show up to this extra extent that just it's too much for my body to keep up with, then yes, I fall over in the middle of launches. And this has happened a few times. And so then like each time I'm like, oh, it's the launch, it's the style of the launch that needs to change. But actually, no, I need to work out what like showing up is. Because like you hear it, like I hear it from coaches who I follow, who I admire, who have the results that I want to create in my business. And they're like, oh, you have to show up, and you've got to show up and like they're talking about the energy. And then, so like, this is something that I have to work on. This is so funny. This is lessons learned. This is nothing what I thought I was going to talk to you guys about. But yeah, it's like, I've got to work out what showing up 100% or like what showing up can look like for me that's not wearing my body out, but still gets results. And see, and this is where it feels counterintuitive to all of the things that I have been taught, because um like for me, like when I'm showing up in calm and confidence and passion and that kind of thing, it's this calm confidence, it's this knowing, and like that energy is not created by showing up at 1,000%. So this 1,000% number, which I know for people who are really into maths, I'm probably offending all of you. I just I'm trying to explain that in my brain is like 100% isn't enough. It's like, oh, it's like I've got this launch, I've got this really big launch, and I don't like, I have a couple of people who assist me, but they have certain defined roles. They're not necessarily assisting me that much with launch. So I then feel like, I'm trying to do a launch that, a team of 10 people would do. And I'm trying to show up as if 10 people are in my brain with all of their energy. Do you know what I mean? And so, yeah, it's kind of no wonder that things are just crazy. So, this, let me just try and remember and recap a little bit of what I have said here. And that is that in that bravery month, then I was trying to work at this 1,000%, which I need to work on some more. And it's like, So for me, much like I have with the, the brave goals and that whole, did I put in 80% effort? It's like, I need to show up in my launch like 80% because my 80% is probably somebody else's 100%. And this is what some things that I did with perfectionism that helped me of like, you know what, 80% is like my 80% is probably more than good enough. And yeah, like and that, I'm safe, I'm loved, I'm, forgiven for my mistakes and things like that. 80% is good. So yes. Uh Now it's really interesting because I've just been talking this out and talking about changing it's my thoughts and my beliefs is kind of what I'm sort of reframing here of like, actually, hey, let's test out. Let's see what showing up 80% looks like in a launch. I know what that looks like in a sales call and when they go like just really easy. It's like it's getting in that energy of just things come easily to you and that like abundant energy and things like that. Hmm. And yet sometimes when I feel like I'm not in abundant energy, I feel like I need to create it by like my legs running really fast underneath or like, the duck paddling underwater. And it's like, oh, that's how I can create abundance and that's how I can show up. And yeah. Because I'm naturally already there because I'm so nervous. And a lot of that has to be with getting a little disconnected from the outcome of the launch as well. So yes. When I did my lessons learned, like I have this check-in process, like for each week and then for the months and then for the quarters. And it's pretty much the same for all of them. It's just like, hey, let's rename this to monthly and quarterly. So it's like looked at what worked well, what didn't work well, my lessons learned and recommendations, and this is part of what I've been talking through. Then there's the goal check-in. Did I put in the 80% effort? Then then it's like, okay, now let's look at the thoughts that sort of created that reality, the feelings, and then how can we reframe that? And then what actions can I take next to get back on track, right? And then there's also like remember this, like remember for next quarter section, which is like, oh, okay, which is the same on your weekly. It's like, remember this for next week, like little to-dos and things like that. And then there's the actual numbers tracking, which I am still building my skills on tracking numbers of things like, how many conversations I have, how many offers I make, how many, invites to bravery calls and things like that. I have a love-hate relationship with reporting. I'd rather be doing the stuff than reporting on it, but I really need to get this data so that I have real evidence for my brain, which will help the thoughts and the feelings anyway. So this is why I'm doing this. However, it's still becoming a bit of a learned thing, especially the daily tracking. Weekly tracking and tracking after launches, that's pretty normal for me because I didn't always used to time my launches to time in with the quarters like I'm doing at the moment. So, yeah. Hmm. So, my quick list of what worked well was the getting the guest podcasts recorded, like me being on other people's podcasts. Starting that process worked really well. How many I organized didn't work too well all at once. And so, like, one of my lessons learned is, don't schedule 3 or 4 guest appearances in 5 days again. Just let's do maximum of 2 in a week and just stick to that. Or if I'm going to schedule more, it's like just planning more rest around that. Now that I've done a few more of these, like part of the problem for me is that sometimes when you're doing things for the first time, it's just like the body's going to be on overdrive and understanding that and just having recovery time. And so then maybe not putting it in the week before the launch like that. Um, so some other things that worked well was having the bravery booster calls, which led to clients signing on and testimonials that worked really well. I really enjoyed doing those. And if you're wondering what that is, it's like a 60-minute call with me where we do coaching and seeing what's going on with your business and that kind of stuff. But it's actual coaching, not like not like a sales call where it's like, hey, here's why you should work with me. But it kind of is, because it's like, oh, hey, here's what it's like to work with me in actual reality. With the mindset stuff, I just find it really valuable for us to get a sense of each other. And that's why I like the bravery booster calls, because it's like I can get a sense of who you are, how you think, how, whether you're ready for this stuff and that kind of thing, as opposed to the way I was traditionally taught to do, like sales calls. And I don't even follow the sales call script or anything. And people are like, oh, this is amazing. Let's talk about working together. And others have been like, this is amazing. Let me get you a testimonial. So like that's just been amazing. So, and I've said amazing too many times. The other thing that has worked, coffee chat calls, which has led to clients, which has been really good as well. And doing the masterclass in the CEO crowd was really good because I had a few more people at that, although it did kind of like a lot of my audience came from people in that group because those people know me better. I've spent more time building relationships there. So then I had less people on actual calls during March as well. And that was something that definitely got into my head, was the lack of numbers. And then, I talked about that last one. So, yep. Anyway, also, I created this check-in system. Like I've used different parts of this check-in system before. It's just I put it all into one place. I have a fondness for tracking things in my brain. And now we're not doing that. We have actual documents that we fill out, that I fill out. And others can too if they want, or they can take it, tweak them, that kind of thing. And the other thing that worked well, even though this didn't technically happen in quarter 1, I feel like it relates to quarter 1, is that I took the week off at the beginning of April and I have scheduled in for the first week of July to take that off. Now, so I'm looking forward to that. Something that did help to reset my nervous system was meditating so that I could get to sleep, and listening to, theater dream music and stuff like that, which was good. So, yeah. And the things that didn't work well was just like I overworked my nervous system in the first 2 weeks, and so the last 2 weeks was a bit of a crash. And the growing my email list, I didn't put in effort towards that, so I've got mindset work required around that. And there wasn't enough people to launch my group program to. At least I didn't feel that I had the numbers there. So I didn't do as much pitching and things like that as normal. So yeah. And I wrote health failed me at the end of March. But as I've been talking out, it's like actually kind of, it all makes sense. Really, really does make sense. So something that I'm going to test out in June is to change up, instead of doing all of the like 90-minute masterclasses throughout the month, I am testing out running them as live sessions in the last week of June. So splitting the 1 hour into, or the 90 minutes into 3 30-minute live sessions, running from the 24th to the 26th of June, and in that last week. And part of the reason is that, because there's still going to be all the lead up and everything, so I'm still going to have to manage my energy and that whole 1000%, 80% thing that I was talking about. The other reason is because I just wondered if I was doing it too early. So having the live sessions in the last week, like it's there for people who are already planners. They might be wanting to see what happens in that last month before they really get into planning out planning out quarter 2. So that's why I'm trying it out of like, okay, let's all get a plan for the next quarter. We're going to do it in the last week of June. And I think that this is going to work. In June, there will be like a lead up for a couple of weeks, and then there'll be that, here's the sessions. If people want to do anything early, I have like a pre-recorded 90-minute masterclass that people can get a hold of, and they can watch that if they prefer to do it separately rather than me running the 3 live sessions in June, which I'm going to be running in the Facebook group. And yeah, so, and then, like I said, I've got the first week off in July. I've got, just watching when I schedule in those guest appearances, and also planning more rest and exercise during my day-to-day activities, and taking a full weekend off is my new plan. So, in order to help with my anxiety, I used to really sit down and it started out on Sundays. Oh, I'll plan out the week on Sunday. So then I'm ready and I don't get the Sunday scaries, right? Which is amazing. Okay. And I plan out the week ahead and everything. But then other things started to creep into Sunday. Things like doing the bookkeeping, some of that admin work, right? And yeah, like, so that was definitely one of them. And then something else that snuck in to the weekend was then, like prepping for podcasts and podcast editing and things like that, getting them all prepped and ready to go so they're ready to edit. There's a few things that need to happen. I can't just grab an episode and start editing. There's some stuff that has to happen first. So yeah, just all these things started to sneak into Sunday. Then Sunday became this work day. And I found just how much better I felt when I took the whole weekend off, when I had that week off. So now I'm just trying to make that happen. So this kind of means some different stretching on my part, in that now basically Friday needs to be prepping for the next week. And all that stuff that I would do on a Sunday needs to be happening on Friday, as well as the odd client call or other, program call or something like that. So yes, some things to test out, which kind of means that I have less working days per week, especially because I don't try not to work on Wednesdays, because I take mum to medical appointments or take her to the shops and things like that on Wednesdays. And my nervous system works really well doing a couple of good days and then having a day off in the middle, and then 2 focus days and then 2 days off. Like, that's what I'm trying to do. So yes, that's what worked, what didn't work, my lessons learned and recommendations. So the key takeaways, as I had planned them for this episode, was to be kind to yourself when things don't go according to plan. And I don't know if I stressed this enough, because I was kind of having my own epiphanies while talking this episode out. But the one thing like I didn't do was like, oh my God, I can't believe you're not working, and oh, you've failed in the middle of a launch and things like that. Anytime stuff like that came up, I was with the journal and I was working through it and just like, it's okay, I'm doing what I can. I'm learning some lessons here. And like I said, as I was talking about, it's like I really see that whole 1000%, 80% thing happening here. So, as I said, this is how I work through things when like the thoughts and your health derails your momentum in business. Like, you have a choice over what you think in these situations. And I did say that I was going to talk to you about like the whole like not beating yourself up. And I'm not sure how well I covered that in this actual episode, so I apologize. But I will just say that, the new thoughts and the actions that I'm taking moving forward, that, okay, so I'm going to test out this different system for running the masterclasses and see how that works. And also test out like just my energy and that kind of thing. And yes, it's just it's actually toning. It's yeah, it's like toning down that whole doing all of that thing, doing all the things out of not enoughness. So as opposed to just going, oh, oh, you clearly didn't work hard enough. So like, and this would be why I would sort of trip up in launches and then not want to set dates for the next one because it was just this mental minefield, right? Um, and I did spend a lot of last year not really launching like this or doing masterclasses and things like that because I love running masterclasses, but the process of getting people to them and all that stuff, it's not as much fun when you don't have all the money to spend on like paid advertising and things like that. So uh the the other key takeaway from today was spotting the negative thinking and the repeating patterns and how to work through it. Now, I've definitely covered this because I've talked about repeating patterns of my, my perfectionism, the 1000%, the negative thinking, or even just the thinking around, oh, I need to show up as something more than what I am so that I can, really make everything happen and for people to buy from me. And that's something that I see a lot in my clients as well at times. And yeah, just all of that stuff. So if you are listening to this and you are kind of understanding what I'm talking about, you've gone through similar things, or you're even finding yourself just getting stuck on doing the things that you need to, staying consistent, posting the content, all of that stuff, I just invite you to come find us over at the Business Bravery Facebook group. There'll be a link in the show notes, or you can find the link on my Instagram over at Tiffany G Studios at TIFFANY G for golf STUDIOS. So you can also find out details about the next round of masterclasses and things. But like I said, that's all going to be happening over in the Facebook group. So join us over there. All right. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. Please reach out to me on Instagram and let me know that you heard this. If you want to book into one of those, the 60-minute bravery booster calls, definitely get in touch and I will give you all the details and the booking link, and so that you can work through this stuff. The ability to have coaches to help you untangle these, like what I call webs of worry and all of this stuff, is invaluable. The ability to talk it out, it can just help so much. Like there's so much you can do by like writing it down and reframing and all that we do in the Business Bravery Framework. There's just so much more that can be done in a session, and just talking it out and just having somebody ask you the right questions and help you to uncover beliefs you didn't even know that were driving you, right? Like as I uncovered while I was talking my stuff out on the podcast here today, it was like, oh, actually, you know what? I can see this whole thing of me actually having to do this stuff at 1000%, and this belief that I have to, in order to run a big launch, then I have to work harder and run the 1000%, which is just doesn't help. Like it's too much. It's just too much. Trying to work at that level and just like trying to work harder into sales is not how it works. Like, thanks so much for listening. I'll finish it up here, and that's it from me. Bye for now. Thanks for listening to the Business Bravery podcast. Has this episode inspired you to do something brave? Even if it's only send a difficult email, please share it with me on Instagram or other social media channels. Feel free to tag me at Tiffany G Studios. That's TIFFANY G for golf, STUDIOS, no spaces, no underscores, etc. Or you can use the hashtag Business Bravery Podcast so that I can cheer you on, and together we can inspire other coaches and course creators to do brave things in their business and life. Now, I'm Tiffany, and I'll leave you with this one last thing. What's one brave thing you're going to do today? It doesn't have to be big. Even the smallest steps can create the most massive results. So again, feel free to share it with me either publicly or privately so that I can cheer you on. That's it from me. Until next time, bye for now.